During the course of Michael Jackson's life, there were a lot of people that tried to take advantage of him because of the fact that he was, well, Michael Jackson, and because he had a lot of money. And in the aftermath of his death, that is something that has unfortunately continued. Now, over the course of these past several years, there's been a lot of discussion in regards to the lives Wade and James claim they had with Michael Jackson, specifically in the late 80s, early 90s. But despite the investigative digging some journalists have claimed to do on Wade and James, there hasn't been much coverage of their lives prior to changing their tune about Michael, specifically what their lives and finances looked like right before switching it up. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. Now, if you let Wade and James tell it, they'll say that this has never been about the money for them, that they don't want money, they only want quote unquote justice, and now they apparently, quote unquote, want their day in court. But that is not true, and that hasn't always been the case, because just prior to both of them changing their tunes against Michael, well, they were struggling financially. A lot. Like, debt. A lot of debt. Now, we've covered this a little bit more in depth in some of our previous videos, but just to give you a brief recap, Wade was involved to some extent with the Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil project somewhere around 2010, 2011-ish. Around this same time, Wade was also offered a job in what was going to be the latest iteration of Step Up, and he left his involvement with the Michael Jackson Cirque show to take this job with Step Up. At some point, Wade no longer became involved with the Step Up project. And Wade has different stories as to why that was and what exactly happened. You can see what he told the Michael Jackson Cirque team behind me. He's claimed different things in different court documents and Leaving Neverland, so it's kind of hard to keep up. But we'll just say at some point, he's no longer involved in this Step Up production. What you're seeing behind me is Wade's actual email/letter. And if you kind of look at it closely, you will see that Wade is essentially apologizing for going MIA. So just based on this letter, based on what he's saying, it's kind of safe to assume that he just kind of left the Michael Jackson Cirque project hanging and potentially did so without contacting them, letting them know, because he's apologizing profusely for just kind of going off the radar. Not only that, but he's also inquiring about ways to get back involved with the Cirque production. There's differing accounts of what happened after this as far as why Wade no longer was involved with the Cirque project, but what we do know for sure is that Wade was no longer involved in the Cirque project. And by his own admission, which you can see in this document behind me, he was not working. Now, this is a problem when it comes to people who have the kind of jobs that Wade has. So if you don't know, already, Wade is a dancer/choreographer. That is his primary job. And when you have that kind of job in the entertainment industry, the artsy, creative jobs, etc., you get paid by the gig. So if a dancer or choreographer does not have a dancing gig, they are not actively making money, which is what Wade Robson admits in this document behind me once again. Fast forward to 2012, and we're now literally just months, maybe a year at most, removed from Wade contacting the Michael Jackson Cirque team to become a part of the project again, potentially. And now Wade is shopping a book deal. And this is actually something that we are going to be discussing a little more in depth in its own separate video. But just to make a long story short, Wade is trying to actively get a book deal and nobody takes him up on his offer. Nothing happens. It does not work out. Additionally, Wade was literally asked in court to hand over any and all material and communication that he had in regards to this book and shopping it, and he never did. And what he did hand over was heavily redacted, but again, that is something that we will cover in the future. So by Wade's own admission, in late 2011, he was not working, he was not employed. And throughout the course of 2012, he unsuccessfully tried to shop a book. So he did not get a book deal, did not get anything in regards to that. And so now we're at 2013. And what happens in 2013? Wade suddenly goes public with these allegations that Michael did something to him. But before he went public, what he originally tried to do was file a lawsuit under seal. So he was trying to originally go the route of nobody publicly knowing about this, which kind of tells you everything you need to know. All right, now let's jump to James. So the backstory with James and his family is that his parents had a garbage company that they co-owned with a man named Charles Anderson. This garbage business was known as CSU, but it was traded as Anderson Rubbish Disposal. Now, at some point within them establishing this business, Anderson convinced his sisters to become shareholders within the company. And in 2010, these sisters, Anderson sisters, suddenly got a notification in the mail that they were not going to get paid anymore. Now, in case you're wondering, Anderson himself had full knowledge of what was going on, and he was in with this decision. So it's not like the Safechucks went behind his back and they were, trying to screw over his sisters behind his back. That's not what happened. Anderson was involved and knew of this. And so what the Safechucks and Anderson offered to do for the sisters was buy them out. But the Anderson sisters pretty much felt that the amount that the Safechucks and their brother was offering just was not, it was a very unfair amount. And in the midst of all of this going on, the Anderson sisters were hit with a huge tax bill for the company. But of course, it's sort of a catch-22 because now they're no longer getting paid, and that was their main source of income. So how do you pay a huge tax bill when you're not getting paid anymore? Now, this issue sits idle for 3 years. So for 3 years, nothing is done. They aren't given their jobs back. They don't come to an agreement over what they should be paid, et cetera, et cetera. And so 3 years after they receive this letter, the Anderson sisters file a lawsuit against James Safechuck Sr. and Charles Anderson. And then on top of that, James Safechuck's mother was named as a co-conspirator within the lawsuit. Guess when this lawsuit was filed? 6 days. Not even a full week, but 6 days before James went to his psychiatrist and said he realized Michael abused him. In addition to the financial problems that Wade himself had, similarly, Wade's mother, Joy Robson, has also had her fair share of documented financial problems since the beginning of the 2000s. And one of Wade's mother's issues was that she was always sort of starting businesses and initiatives and managerial projects that fell through and ultimately left her in the negatives. This has included credit card debt and mortgage problems that really left her sort of in an upside down state. So let's break down what happened. In 2003, Wade and Joy co-borrowed a mortgage that was basically $450K, and so they were supposed to be making those payments together. And eventually, Wade was removed as a co-borrower. But an additional problem was that the year after Wade and Joy got that house, Joy separately got another home which she financed for $145K. So it was $145K mortgage. So once Wade was removed as a co-borrower, that left Joy pretty much responsible for over $500K in mortgage payments plus interest. So this set Joy down a path of just financial issues because she had to basically reconsolidate her loans and all of that stuff. And then Wade, similarly, first off, if he was being removed as a co-borrower, then you would have to assume that that's either because he could not handle that responsibility anymore or he didn't want to handle that responsibility anymore. On top of that, Wade himself, around that same time where he was unemployed, he wasn't working, 2011, 2012-ish, he also had to downsize his home. His mother is having financial problems. Wade himself is having financial issues. He's not really employed. And what we later found out during the whole Leaving Neverland saga was that in 2011, what Wade was trying to do was privately contact Julian's auctions to sell some of his MJ stuff. And so this is something that didn't get revealed until almost a decade later. But of course, this predates him coming out with his abuse claims. And it also falls in line with him trying to secretly shop that book and then trying to file the original lawsuit under a seal. So, yeah. And since we're also on the topic of what 2019 revealed, that year also brought forth more revelations that Wade's mother had been being pursued by credit card collectors. That amount was somewhere in the 4,500 range. So that kind of came to light. And then his sister and her husband were hit by the IRS with a tax lien. And this lien totaled up to nearly $15,000 because they had been failing to pay their past due amounts for the previous 4 years. So that goes back to 2015. So in short, Wade and his family were having their fair share of financial issues as well. Wade and James / their families had quite a bit of financial issues that were going on around the time that they switched up, which is just very, very convenient. Publicly, Wade and James might be saying that they don't want money or that it's not about the money. The reality is, in court documents, they have got the mediation box checked, which means they would be open to bargaining or negotiating for a settlement. And of course, Team Michael Jackson has been very clear that they are not settling with Wade and James. So they have reiterated that within their court documents. And of course, that box isn't checked off for them. The point is that what Wade and James are saying publicly for good measure or good attention is not what they are hoping for privately. Believe us when we say that we will be covering this more in depth in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. And remember, facts don't lie, but people do.